Hey guys, it's Sasha. Back when Labour came to power in July 2024, Rachel Reeves, the newly appointed Chancellor, immediately announced that there was a £22 billion black hole left by the previous government. Now, at least half of this imaginary black hole was self-inflicted because the UK government immediately gave out huge pay increases in the public sector, which cost around £10 billion. But anyway, then Rachel Reeves went to work because, according to Rachel Reeves, she needed to fix the foundations of the UK economy. So in order to do that, she did nothing about growth, she did nothing about stimulating business, she did nothing about making people go out there and take risks. She increased taxes on employers via a huge increase in the employer national insurance contributions and achieved the exact opposite. And the problem is this. This change was announced in October 2024. Just a year earlier, companies were also hit with an increase in corporation tax rate, which went up from 19% to 25% under the previous government. And at the same time, while this is all happening, the income tax brackets have been frozen, which means that after accounting for inflation, we're all actually getting an increase in income tax every year. We're paying more tax in terms of how much we can buy with our money. And over the last 10 years, the dividend allowance has also been reduced from £5,000 down to £500 as it is right now. If you're a small business owner, you have been absolutely battered by the changes in tax, by the cumulative sum of all of these different things and others. The cost of employing young people has gone absolutely through the roof. It used to be the case that you could employ those people, they don't have any skills, they need a lot of hand-holding, a lot of explaining, maybe a bit more training, but it's okay because you can pay them a bit less. That has really changed now. Minimum wage has gone up from £7.83 in 2019 to £12.21 this year. That is a 56% increase in just 6 years, pretty much 10% per year. But it's gone up a lot more for young people on top of that. And now, in addition to all of this, in addition to the increase in minimum wage, the employer's national insurance has gone up a lot too. And it's not just the fact that the rate increased from 13.8 to 15%, because it doesn't sound like a lot when you put it that way. But it's the fact that this rate now has to be paid from £5,000, whereas before it didn't kick in until £9,100. So imagine that you are a small local business. Let's say that you run a small local shop or a local garage, something like that, and you employ a 19-year-old in your garage. Somebody who left school, has not gone to university, has come out there to get their first job. Let's say that 19-year-old is on minimum wage and works 40 hours a week, for the example. Last year, it cost the business owner £19,200 a year to employ that person, including the employer's national insurance. This year, it costs the same business to employ the same person £23,170. That's a 21% increase in just 1 year in employing the same person. And this is because the increase in minimum wage is then multiplied throughout by the increase in the employer's national insurance. So if you are a local garage and you get hit with this increase, you are really going to feel it. If you have 5 employees, then you might need to let one go because it now costs you one extra person's worth of wages to employ the same number of people. Paying £4,000 extra to employ the same person is a big deal when your margins are thin. And if you're, for example, employing 3 young people in your small local business, that's a £12,000 hit per year. And it's extremely obvious now why the UK economy is slowing down. We've just got the new data from Standard & Poor's which says that the private sector output expands at slowest pace since May. The Flash UK PMI Composite Output Index sits at 51, which is barely above 50. Anything below 50 means that the economy is contracting. And while the month-to-month numbers do fluctuate in this report, there is a pretty clear trend at the moment which is not heading in the right direction. The number of jobs in the UK continues falling. In July and August, the drops are not as bad as they were back in spring, but as it stands, while the population of the UK is growing, the total number of jobs at the same time is contracting. And that is a very bad situation to be in. We should be sitting here discussing that the rate of growth is not good enough, right? We should be sitting here talking about the fact that, a monthly increase of 30 or 40,000 jobs should actually maybe be higher. Maybe it should be 50 or 60,000. What should the government do to make the number of jobs go up faster than it is going up today? But instead, we're sat here looking at people actually losing their jobs every month since this government started announcing their economic policies in October last year. And the UK Chancellor is going around to drinks events with London bankers all over the city, pretending that nothing is happening. What kind of bullshit is this? But it's actually worse than these numbers are telling you. Because this data shows you the number of payroll jobs by industry. And at the bottom of this spreadsheet, I have calculated two lines. The drop in the most recent month's data and the drop over the last 12 months, over the last year. I did a bit of conditional formatting so that it is color-coded, it's a bit easier to see. When something is orange or red, like, for example, these jobs in manufacturing, or jobs in retail, or jobs in pubs and bars. The red and oranges are telling you that it's a pretty bad situation. These industries are shedding jobs very fast at the moment. In the last month, the total job loss, according to the ONS, was 7,700. But you can see that many of these industries here have each lost more than that, in some cases several times more than that, in the last month alone. And not only that, but everything on the left of this data set is negative at the moment. And then you notice this green bit here, the bit that offsets it. This is where jobs are growing. And they are growing in administrative and support services, so the government hiring more people. Jobs are growing in education, the government hiring more people. And jobs are growing in health, also the government hiring more people. In just the last month, those three segments have grown by over 53,000 jobs. And the total, remember, went down by almost 8,000. So what that means is that everything that is not the government actually lost 60,000 jobs in the last month. And that's a pretty scary statistic, because if 60,000 jobs was the official number, everyone would be panicking. And 60,000 jobs in 1 month is an alarming number. But for some reason, I have not seen a single major newspaper or news channel point this out. I mean, working this out does involve a bit of adding up and subtracting. So I guess it would be pretty much impossible to work out by your typical financial journalist, but this is actually quite serious. And now Rachel Reeves apparently has a new £50 billion black hole that she is going to fix in the next budget in November. Rachel, if you actually want to understand how investing works better, well, not better, just if you want to understand it, to really understand the details, I have a 10% discount code just for you for my Investor Playbook course. Go to the link in the description, go and click on that button to get the course and use the code FLASH10 and you'll get 10% off the price. This discount is only live for 10 days until Sunday, the 5th of October, the end of Sunday. I don't do these discounts often, so if you want to get hours upon hours of useful educational content and live sessions every week, go and sign up. Link below. So that £50 billion number comes from the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. And according to this research, to fix this black hole, Rachel Reeves might need to increase income tax by 5%. So that would mean that the basic rate of tax would increase from 20 to 25%, and then the higher rate would go from 40 to 45%, and the additional rate from 45 to 50%. I hope you are looking forward to this budget as much as I am. And hoping at the same time, after these tax increases go in, that it doesn't completely destroy the economy, which is already on its knees, which it would. Everybody is now speculating which specific taxes Rachel Reeves should increase. The Resolution Foundation thinks that the answer is to increase the income tax by 2% while reducing the national insurance by the same amount. This would mean that people in regular jobs would not really feel much of a change, but pensioners, landlords, and self-employed people would have to pay more tax this way. People like Gary Stevenson, very popular at the moment, are proposing a wealth tax which would charge 2% per year on anyone who has assets worth over £10 million. Aside from the fact that this would be pretty much impossible to actually administer, because you would get stuck in decades worth of lawsuits on how net worth is even calculated and how you would deduce the value of shares in private companies. Aside from all of that, it would still, even according to the proponents of this policy, only raise around £20 billion, even if it was implemented and worked and had no negative secondary effect, which still does not cover even half of the £50 billion that they apparently need. And that's before all the negative impacts from wealthy people leaving, new businesses avoiding setting up in the UK, yada yada yada. This situation is a bit like Rachel Reeves turning up to the scene of an electrical fire. She sees the electric cable there on the ground, right? And it's caused a fire to start on the ground. The leaves are on fire, a couple of trees are on fire. So Rachel Reeves thinks long and hard. She sits there trying to remember her GCSE science for a minute. And then when she realizes that she can't remember anything about her GCSE science, she picks up a bucket of water and she just chucks it at the fire. The problem here, obviously, is that water conducts electricity. So two things happen. First, Rachel gets a bit of an electric shock from the electrical cable conducting electricity through the water that she just threw on the fire. But then it also makes the fire worse because the water lets the electricity conduct to more stuff, burning it all and setting it all on fire. So it actually worsens the situation. So now we are approaching the second budget. The fire has got worse. We can see it in the data. It's now even harder to put the fire out. Rachel Reeves just tried pouring a bucket of water on it, and instead of putting the fire out, it just made the fire twice as big. The £20 billion black hole has magicked itself into a £50 billion black hole. Who could have possibly seen this coming? Except random guys on YouTube. So after thinking about what to do, with all of the best advisors that she could get in the government, all of these advisors, these economic experts, it sounds like the decision will be to get an even bigger bucket of water and try throwing that on the fire to see if that works instead. This is the level of incredible stupidity that we are watching unfold right now in our government. It is a little easier to explain with an analogy. But this is exactly what's happening right now. The UK GDP and employment numbers would currently be negative, and we would officially be in a recession if the government was not busy spending money like no tomorrow. If they didn't spend money on hiring all these people, if they didn't spend money on massive capital investment, we would be in absolute deep shit. And if they didn't cook the GDP numbers. Remember those job numbers that I showed you earlier? If the government was not pumping money into hiring an extra 53,000 people per month into the public sector, we would probably be sat here with an imminent snap election because the position of the government would be untenable. The numbers would be horrific. Their own MPs would probably start revolting. But when you try to fix a problem and your solution only makes the problem worse, most people with a functioning brain would stop, take a moment, and think whether their solution is not in fact the right solution. Maybe there's a different approach. Maybe you should try something fucking different. But if you are a government minister who doesn't actually care, who doesn't even have the capacity, the brain capacity to understand how stupid they are, the answer is just to keep doing the same thing. Increase taxes a bit more taxes. Wait, it didn't work? The economy is fucking up? More taxes. Increasing taxes will do absolutely nothing to stop the UK economy from imploding. In the last inflation report, there were only two things that caused the overall rate of inflation to drop slightly from 4.2 to 4.1%. The first was the cost of rent and mortgages, and the second was airline tickets. Now, airline ticket prices seem to yo-yo up and down by insane amounts in this data, which is not obviously actually what happens in the real world. But it sounds like the Office for National Statistics is just so impossibly bad at collecting the data. I mean, somebody could just write an API that airlines have to use to submit the actual prices paid by consumers for airline tickets so that the government had an absolutely perfectly accurate number. But why use computers and science and stuff to collect perfectly accurate data in 2025 when you can rely on a survey where a few thousand households get cold on the phone instead, right? But anyway, airline tickets are really much ado about nothing here, but the fact is right now that the house prices are falling, and that's now beginning to drag the overall inflation number down. Even Nationwide, which usually produces very optimistic data on house prices, showed a drop in house prices in August. So house prices are now beginning to pull inflation down overall. So while things like food are still going up at over 5% per year, actually food inflation increased in August. If you look through the data, all of the critical stuff, the things that you can't not pay, all of your bills and utilities, things like that, they're all going up at insane rates. In that same transport section where the airline tickets were, train prices, for example, are up 8.8% in August. Electricity, gas and fuel are going up at 9.3% in the most recent data. Look at it. Gas price is up 13% in the last year. And you, the cynical viewer, might be wondering how come? Because natural gas futures are actually 15% lower right now than they were a year ago. Well, that's how energy prices work when the government imposed price cap is applied to every single company that charges every single customer whatever that price cap is. Inflation on essentials is extremely high right now, but inflation, the overall inflation index, also includes a whole bunch of stuff in the basket that you are actually not spending any money on, and that's what makes the average look a lot better. And the price of those things, those other things, is falling at the moment because nobody actually has the money to spend on, I don't know, buying a new TV. The old one works, it'll do just fine. The simple fact is, increasing taxes even more will do nothing to get the private sector going. It will do nothing to stimulate the economy. If the private sector does not get going, then the amount of tax collected by the government to pay for those 50,000 new public sector jobs every month is going to keep going down. It's a spiral. Absolutely nobody seems to talk about growth or how to actually get out of this mess. And that's what I want the conversation to be about. I want to talk about growth because the only way that we are actually going to climb out of this mess is through growth. It is not through taxing this guy a bit more or that guy a bit more. It is not through wealth taxes. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but it's just not, because it's impossible. The numbers don't add up. The only way to get out of this mess is by making people take a risk, making people start a new business, making people go out there and be industrious, is by making it worthwhile for international companies to choose to come and base themselves in the UK, to choose to open the new factory that they have been thinking about in the UK, not somewhere else. It's by making it extremely appealing for people to reinvest wealth within the UK, in UK businesses, instead of parking it in foreign companies. A wealth tax is a relatively insignificant thing compared to what growth would do. And in fact, a wealth tax would probably just lose more money through stopping growth than it would ever collect in tax revenue. If you earn, for example, £25,000 a year, the wealth tax, as is proposed right now, is equivalent to doing a bit of overtime and earning an extra £370 a year. It's not really going to move the needle. It won't change anything about your situation. What would move the needle is figuring out how you can start earning £50,000 from a different job, or maybe £100,000. That's what growth in the economy looks like. But it's just not a populist message. That's why nobody gives a shit. It doesn't find a scapegoat that you can blame all your problems on. It doesn't say, it's not your fault, it's that person's fault. Look, they're the ones that are causing misery for you. It doesn't tell people that the reason that they're doing badly is because this small group of rich people, these filthy rich people, are stealing all of their money. That's what people want to hear. People want somebody to blame. Even if it makes no mathematical sense, no logical sense, and hitting those people with a tax would actually not change anything at all, or probably, in all likelihood, actually make things worse. Remember, my investor playbook course is on sale for the next 10 days only until midnight on the 5th of October. If you're interested, click the link in the description or in the pinned comment, get your 10% discount with the code FLASH10, and go and check it out. I have live sessions with my course members every Thursday, so I'll see you in the next one.